Well, let's bring in our special guest now, and a special guest he most certainly is, a Socceroo himself. Alex, of course, on the books of Manchester City, stepped out in green and gold for the first time with his grandfather and father, Mark, who is with us on the podcast, watching on in the stands. Robbo, I dare say it's been an awesome few days.
Yeah, firstly, thanks for having me on, guys. We all know each other very well, which is great. But yeah, to answer your question, Garby, it's been quite surreal, but also we've really made, a carnival experience of it with the family, and not so much with Alexander because he's focused on the job, but definitely as family and extended family, we've made the most of it. Thanks, mate.
Seeing your son run out in green and gold with your father next to you, I just love to know what that felt like.
It's very surreal in the end, but to be honest, Dave, along the way, we just kind of took it for granted that that was the norm. And it wasn't till I spoke to Phil Wolanski the other day and he goes, "Come on, Robbo, that's just not the norm." It's we just assumed that it would happen purely off the back of Alexander's talent. However, as circumstances unfolded, that we probably could never have been 1000% sure that he would ever pull on the green and gold. So me and my dad sort of walked up to the Pullman the other day at Homebush, and I turned to him and I looked at him, and I just had like a sense of, I'd been out that way, Homebush, with Alexander as a youngster playing and stuff. And I just looked at him and I said, "Isn't this a bit freaky that we're going to visit him in the Socceroos hotel? My dad come to visit me when I was playing, and I used to go into the hotel as a son of a former player as well, anywhere my dad played." So it was kind of, I don't know, it was kind of a pinch yourself moment, really, to answer your question, Dave, and surreal once he made the first step onto the turf out there at the stadium. And I was kind of like hardly watching the game because I was watching him, and I always want to delve in and see what sort of his demeanor is on the sidelines and stuff. And then as soon as I seen that he was sat between Jathan Cummings and Bailey Wright, I knew he was in good hands. I've got some really good friends that one that played with Bailey Wright, his name's Ashley Williams. He played with Bailey at Bristol City, and he goes, "Robbo," he said, "I'm going to flick him a message and tell him to get Alexander under his wing." He said he's an absolute champion of a bloke. And then through, my Scottish ties and stuff like that, everyone was always like, "Oh, keep him away from the cum dog." And I thought, nah, I don't know the guy, but he reminds me, Dave, of Neil Jablonski from afar. And I just thought, if anyone ever come to Harcoa, Jabba would get them in a headlock and guide them in the right or wrong direction. So I'm happy with that, mate. It was the perfect blend. I've had people ask me before, "What's he like as a player?" And I say, "He's all right." And then most people turn around and go, "Well, if Robbo says he's all right, he must be damn good." So I agree with you. He's a good player. He's an even better kid. However, once everything is said and done, the hardest part was starting the journey of playing for the Socceroos. I think probably the easier part, I know this sounds really silly, is getting a career in the Socceroos, but I kind of feel like with his pride and passion that he possesses, along with his football ability, the first thing I said to Arnie was, I said, "You will love working with this guy. He's the ultimate professional. He puts his heart on his sleeve. He does everything 110%. So it's a given that he will have a long international career, Tom, and I agree with you on that. What he will offer to the Socceroos is maybe a different dynamic to most. Most people remember him when he was a kid, where he would do like 3 step overs, a little Cruyff turn, nutmeg 3 people and put it in the top corner. As we all know, things catch up in the end, and he simplified his game, and you just don't get away with that at the level he's playing at the moment. So everything is simplified. You could see his first touch is excellent, and his ability to scan and get himself into nice little areas is very high. Intelligence of football, and I just think he offers something a little bit different to potentially where the Socceroos are at the moment. He's the most humble kid in the world, and he very rarely interacts with social media. He never really puts himself out there to sort of say, I am this, I'm doing this. So I guess that would have been a hard one. He's got this real poker face. He's quite good at poker, actually. But he's got this real poker face where he's very calm and collected, a little bit different to me, because I would have got all excited and jumped up and down and sort of said, I can play for 4 countries. And to be honest, mate, he took it in his stride. So that's one element. You would have got nothing from him in that respect. And then the flip side of that is myself. It's very hard for me to make comment on Alexander. I would have done if you asked me at 14, 15, 16-ish. And then I'm starting to think to myself, as a father, I've really got to try and let this kid make his own decisions. Let's be honest, Gabs, if he made the completely wrong decision, I would intervene and go, hey, champ, you've made a little bit of a misjudged error here. Maybe you should rethink it. So, but I didn't have to. He's very calm, collected, mature, and he come to his own conclusion. And if the truth be known, mate, when Arnie made that phone call, he did have a little tear in his eye and a lump in his throat. So I think, the whole pride and passion thing comes back to what do you want to do? Because your heart wants to do one thing, your gut tells you another thing, and then your mind is racing all the time. So if that's the long-winded answer that gives you an understanding of where the kid is up to, that's how he got to the decision of, he'd love to. No mistake about it, mate. Arnie played a massive part in this. Arnie's been speaking to Alexander and me for the best part of 2 years. So he's obviously very good at poker as well in that respect. So, we have had that dialogue, and that he just hasn't played for the younger age groups, guys, for the Australian squad, because it never really materialised due to him being injured. If we look at it, in all honesty, he's not played much football in the last 2 years. So if you discount the last 2 years, that'll take him back to the age of 17. Prior to that, he was playing international football for England because there was no international football realistically for Australia.
And he showed his passion on Friday night when he was in the box. Is that a trait of yours? You hand that one down?
Well, yeah, 100%. And I've been asking for it for a long time from him. Is, look, he plays at the best football team in England in respect to the under-23s. When he was in the under-18s at Man City, now the under-21s, they've won everything. So he very rarely has to make a tackle. It's all possession-based football. So that's a little bit frustrating for me, because I was always the one that wanted to get about, make some tackles, win some headers, really, again, wear my heart on my sleeve. But he's kind of been in cruise control, if that makes sense. And I've never had to see him really be that sort of aggressive. But I was over the moon when I seen him jump up, and I'll keep this on the low. But, too right, mate. Who's slapping someone in the head when they're lying on the floor when realistically doesn't come from a diving family? I mean, I would have looked like the Titanic if I went down in the box. But he claims he got clipped. He's an honest kid. So someone slaps me in the head, 100%, I'd have him by the throat. And yeah, it's passion and pride that he's got, Dave, to be honest, mate. Taking away everything that he'd done before he left the shores of Australia, he was 12 years old when he went to Manchester United. And we all know the red tape that sort of comes into play when you're dealing with FIFA and the likes of, who lives where, who plays where. And I wasn't really aware of that. I was really just concerned on my family settling in a place where I used to play, and almost really going back to my roots as a player and getting my kids settled at school and playing sports. So when he ended up at Man United, I thought this was awesome. I had to pinch myself a few times because I'd never really been behind the scenes of such a big football club, played against big football clubs, but never been behind the scenes. And so when the opportunity come for him to choose, which club to play for, rightfully so at that time, and possibly still the case, based on the result at the weekend, is Manchester United and Manchester City were poles apart in terms of a player development in the youth ranks. So Alexander made a conscious decision, even though he was 14, to move across town to Manchester City, where he worked extremely hard. He had, a not an operation, but a hip problem at first, which kept him out for 7 months. He come back from that, and then, kind of went in for another challenge and done the other hip, all to do with growing pains. So he was out for another 6 months. So you think about that, there's a year and a bit that he was out of football. Come back from that, one of the kids in training tackled him, and he done his ankle quite bad, and he was out for another sort of 4 months with that. So then he's gone, come back. So you can now start to imagine the kids really fighting to try and get a career in the game. But every time he was taking one step forward, he was getting pushed 2 steps back. And then so by the time of 18 years old comes about, personally, I don't think he was ready to go on loan to Ross County, but that's my emotions talking. Whereas Manchester City were thinking more about the commodity and more about the player. So in their mind, it was a case of let's get him out on loan, along with Callum Doyle. So he's a teammate of Alexander's at Manchester City. So the two of them were the youngest in Britain to go out on loan. So I think that's important, that people understand that no one goes out on loan at the age of 18. You might go out on loan to the likes of, I don't know, Altrincham FC as like a work experience sort of model. But respectfully, Callum and Alexander, Callum went to Sunderland and Alexander went to Ross County in the Scottish Premier League. So I guess that kind of tells you what Manchester City thinks of their players at the age of 18. They can go and contribute at such high levels. He didn't get a lot of game time. If you ask me as a father, as a professional player, coach, I think he should have got more. Obviously the coach, I wouldn't say the coaching staff, but maybe the coach didn't see that for whatever reason. It's irrelevant now, because what he did get is he got a very good experience. He lost a lot of money in the way of fine systems because Manchester City youth don't fine the kids. So him going into that sort of, sink or swim environment, there was a fine system, and it was comical because he basically paid for the Ross County Christmas party based on taking the bait from the boys, because they had, a roulette wheel that if you got fined, then you could opt to take the wheel, and it would double, and so 200 become 400, and the boys were egging him on, going, "Go on, Robbo, have another spin. You'll wipe the slate clean." So he'd spin it again, so you're now to 800 quid, and so everyone's like, "Man City money, that's fine." But what a great learning experience at the age of 18. So I think you learn a lot. I would never say that there's a bad loan, because every loan has a silver lining, and I certainly think it did there. So to come back to Man City, he tore his hamstring in the tendon area when he got back from Ross County, and that kept him out for the best part of 7 months. So if you consider the first 6 months at Ross County only playing 74 minutes as an accumulation in 6 months, there was no reserve team, so he couldn't play any matches. So he played 74 minutes in the first 6 months. Then he was out for 7 months. Taking into consideration his hip injuries, his ankle injuries, the kid's probably missed the best part of almost 3 years of footy. So to come back, it makes it even more of a great achievement to sort of impress Pep. And then Pep called him up to train with him, on a permanent basis. So he was with them permanently. They took him away to Abu Dhabi. He went away to Morocco. So they were all sort of parts of him gaining his confidence and fitness again. So in the end, he's now played 11 games, 12 games on the trot, which is unheard of for him. And now it's really just about building his own confidence up. Forget about impressing anyone. I just looked at him the other night and I thought, bless you, champ, because, you've really worked hard, and I could see him, in many respects, he's not quite at full fitness. So what I would say is, and, I'm happy to say this, is that things will only get better for the kid. Talent will stay the same, but his fitness and his strength will improve. I'd say he's probably 12 to 18 months off in the way of development, as you said there, Tom. I think definitely football-wise, whether that be mentally or physically, I think his body physically is still growing. He needs to put on some size. Having said that, he plays at, I would suggest, the world's best football club, where none of the boys are big. You know, Ruben Diaz is quite big, John Stones is quite big, but if you look at Bernardo Silva, even Gundogan, these sort of guys, they're not big frames. They're just really super intelligent footballers. So it's one thing me saying, you know, are you lifting those weights instead of just looking at them? Because I'm expecting him to be bigger, if that makes sense. But I guess as long as he's got the balance, the awareness, the agility, and really the ability to move around the field, he'll find his feet. He'll be fine. The reason he's still at probably Man City now, Garbs, is because after 2 years out of the game, it was really important that he stayed and just played 21s football. Now, everyone says that he should be out playing men's football, but it's a bloody hard ask after having 2 years almost of zero football. So therefore, it's really important that he gets himself fit. Also, the confidence within the player is that you don't want to be going into games questioning yourself. I'm not saying it's not serious in the under-21s. Of course it is. They want to win championships and titles. However, that's probably not as harsh on the body as it would be if he was out playing in the championship or in a first team where it's for 3 points, sink or swim every week. So it was really important that he is where he is now. We're thankful for the club allowing him to do that, because the older the kids get at Man City, the quicker the club are to shift them out, because the taxi rank has more taxis coming through from down below. So we're thankful that they've allowed him to do that. He trains with the first team every day, plays in the under-21s. And the next step naturally is going to be, I would suggest, a pre-season with Manchester City, so that everyone can see him at his full fitness. Depending on what happens with Gundogan signing a new contract, Bernardo Silva signing a new contract, I would suggest that they would want to have another really good look at him in regards to what he can offer. He's a different player to a lot of the boys that are at Man City. He's a goal-scoring midfielder. He's been likened to sort of like a Frank Lampard style of player, where he arrives late in the box. He's very hard to pick up, and he's got a real eye for goal. So if Manchester City see the need for someone like that, then of course he would stay, Garbs. But ultimately, he's got 2 years to run on his contract. He would look to get first team experience somewhere once he's built up that confidence, as we talked about. That's why this is so important for him to come out here and be amongst the boys. And one thing I will say to him, and he quoted it the other day, is he plays better, and I wouldn't say with better players, but he plays better with older players. He's very forward thinking with his thought process. So I think he's finished with youth football. He lost a lot of it through injuries and all that sort of thing, but I think he's past it now, and he really just wants to kick on and become a man.
Can't wait to see where it all ends up. The beauty for us, he's a Socceroo now, and there are many more caps in green and gold, no doubt, to come. Mark Robertson, thanks so much for sharing your insights on Alexander. Everyone in Australian football is excited by it, not just his future, but also the story and the lineage with the other Socceroos in the Robertson family. So thanks so much for joining us, mate. It was great.
Much appreciated, guys. Super.